No one's blaming you.
You said when I was up.
What happens when a friend you trust to keep you safe turns out to be the monster who you ought to run from? In the case of Keeley, she found out the dark, ugly side to her friend's innocent smiles a bit too late. This is the heartbreaking case of Keeley Bunker. Before the 19th of September, 2019, Keeley was full of life. Born on the 7th of September, 1999, Keeley was both a blessing to her parents and a role model to her siblings. Her mother described her as a precious and beautiful daughter, while her sister described her as one of the most vibrant, caring, and beautiful souls this earth has ever seen. She was a go-getter who had worked her way through the hurdles of life to get a degree to become a teacher. On the day she met her horrifying fate, she was to go in for an interview to become an assistant teacher. But that promising life was cut short by her childhood friend, Wesley Street. Wesley and Keeley had known each other since they were in infant school. Although they might not have been best of friends, they were quite close because they maintained their friends all through the years. And it was for this reason Keeley invited him to her 20th birthday celebration, after the musician HS concert at the O2 on the 18th of September, 2019. Keeley was very excited about that day because 2 days before, she had tweeted saying, "The only thing keeping me going is seeing H on Wednesday. Hopefully, he'll see me and we'll get married." On the day of the concert, Keeley and her best friend Monique Riggin met Wesley at the New Street station in Birmingham after the concert. The trio went to a nightclub where they partied till 2:40 a.m. Then they got a taxi back to Tamworth where they stayed. Keeley's house was a walking distance from where they alighted, and Monique had asked her to stay the night due to concerns about her safety. But Keeley didn't want to miss the job interview she had fixed the next day and said, "I've got Wes. He'll walk me back. It'll be fine." That was the last time Monique saw her. The next day, Keeley didn't get to the interview, and friends and family tried to contact her. By 5:30 p.m. that day, her father filed a missing persons report. After reaching out to friends, the police discovered Wesley was the last person to see her, and he was immediately brought in for questioning. The 20-year-old man claimed to have parted ways with Keeley when they reached a telephone box close to his home, leaving her to walk the rest of the path alone. As part of the investigation, the police officers told him to take them to the exact location, and he pointed it out. He even showed the officers the exact route they had walked to that very spot, and they couldn't be more grateful for his help, and they let him go. But at 9 p.m., her uncle Jason Brown, who was part of the search party, discovered Keeley's body submerged in a pond in Wigington Park in Tamworth. Her clothes had been taken off and there were marks on her neck indicating that she had been strangled to death. It was a horrifying sight. Wesley immediately became the first suspect. The police arrested Wesley and the interrogation began. He stuck on the fact that he had left Keeley alive at the telephone box, but when they threw his mobile phone, his GPS showed that he went to the location of murderer 7 times that day. And when he tried to argue his innocence, the CCTV footage showed him and Keeley by Tamworth Rugby Club later than the time he claimed to have left her. His bank card and jacket was found in the park, and the post-mortem examination of Keeley revealed Street's DNA. With this evidence, he was charged with the sexual assault and murder of Keeley. Initially during the trial, Wesley kept arguing his innocence. He mentioned that he was so drunk, he messed up the description of how the night went. He promised that he had left her happy. She seemed happy 110%. However, later into the trial, he claimed to have accidentally killed her during consensual sex in the park. He said Keeley had flirted and teased him as they walked home, and in the end, they had found themselves in the park. But you should note that before that confession, he claimed that they were childhood friends who had never entertained any ideas of romance. So it was clear that he kept changing his statements to go in line with the evidence that was being presented. Wesley went on to describe how his GPS location showed him returning to the murder spot several times that day. He said, after accidentally murdering her during a moment of passion, he dumped the body in the pond and kept returning to the location to cover Keeley with branches. When he was asked why he didn't tell the truth, when he was asked by the police and Keeley's relatives before the body was discovered, he said, "I didn't know how to act and explain to other people how she died because I felt embarrassed in myself and very scared to explain to the police, everyone, my mom and dad." However, the evidence presented by the prosecution showed otherwise. On their walk home, Wesley had persuaded Keeley to go towards the rugby club close to the park on the pretext of going for a smoke. And on getting to the park, He had forced himself on her and held her in a chokehold while she was fighting for freedom. His claims that he killed her in a moment of passion couldn't have been possible because it would take more than a few seconds for her to die. Then when she died, he took her to the pond, covered her up with branches, and went home. The evidence presented before the jurors were already enough to find him guilty. But before the sentencing date, more chilling evidence about Wesley's horrible nature came to light. Due to the severity of the case, media outlets were quick to post details about the trial, and this unknowingly triggered a reaction from women who had been previous victims of Wesley. In the court, Wesley portrayed himself as a young man who had made innocent mistakes. His father also attested that he was autistic, needed help understanding the proceedings of the trial. But 3 women who had been victims of his sexual assault came forth to shred every ounce innocence left. In the year 2015, he sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl. In 2017, his victim was a 15-year-old girl. And just a few months before Keeley's death, his victim was another 20-year-old. Although investigations show there was a possibility there were more victims, those 3 were the only ones courageous enough to step forward. One of them told the court that she thought she was never going to get over it, but she had fought the sickening thoughts that almost overwhelmed her. Another said she was really scared to tell anyone because of how ashamed she felt. But after hearing about Keeley's case, she just couldn't remain quiet. After Wesley attacked me, I was scared to tell anyone. However, looking back, if something made you physically sick in your stomach, it is definitely not okay. The third survivor shared how she blamed herself for the incident because she had gone to his house. It wasn't until I heard the sad news concerning Keeley that I found the courage to tell someone. It was at that point that I felt the full force of what happened to me. But by that time, I had already dealt with my grief in what I feel was a bad way. Hannah Sidaway, the lead prosecutor, described Wesley's offense as a pattern of offending. One of them told the court that she thought she was never going to get over it. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment attack, it was a pattern of behavior over a significant amount of time. She described Wesley as a man who tried to get what he wanted without having any regard for the consequences. She also mentioned that his innocent look and friendly character made his victims less weary of him. Reports show that his victims were either friends or acquaintances. It's easy to have a stereotypical image of a perpetrator, but what we often do not think about is a young lad who is popular, who has many friends, who is well known and liked. Detective Inspector Cheryl Hannon, senior investigating officer on the case, also described Street as a devious and manipulating character.
I think there's some audacity in his arrogance there, in playing the martyr as to why are people blaming me when I left her at that phone box knowing full well where she was and what he'd done, and the efforts he'd gone to conceal it to delay people finding her if ever. And as did Keeley trusted him to walk her home that night, and there's only Wesley to blame that she didn't make it home.
He was obviously trusted by Keeley. He was trusted to walk her home that night. He has manipulated a situation where he has preyed upon her and ultimately raped and murdered her. He has then gone on to put himself at the center of the investigation, to lie to the police, to her family, to her friends that she was safe and well. Then he has changed his lies as the evidence has been put to him. Wesley was sentenced to 30 years in prison without parole. During the sentencing, the judge described how Wesley had cut the beautiful life of Keeley short just to satisfy his desires. She lost the opportunity of fulfilling her life ambition, helping to educate young children. Her family had lost the company of their beloved daughter, sister, and a niece. Keeley's relatives also shared how they would never completely heal enough to forgive Wesley. Her mother, Debbie, said, as Keeley's family, the outcome of this trial will never be enough in terms of justice. Keeley was the kindest, most caring, innocent young lady you could ever meet, and was only just starting out in her life. Such as the hell we feel we are incapable of showing any forgiveness. The horrible fate of Keeley Bunker is a reminder that we can never truly tell who a person is. Everyone should always take precautions when they're out so late, because a person who you might deem your protector might actually be the predator.